We were talking at some point about actors that tend to just completely steal every scene that they're in, and not necessarily leading roles. I mean, we both have actors we like, but I think it's fun to highlight those actors that just show up every once in a while and just always absolutely are the most memorable part of their movie. You know the kind of guy I mean? Kind of guy or gal?
I know a couple guys and gals that would fit that description. We've highlighted a couple on the show that I feel like don't qualify.
Yeah.
But like people that we always love to see. But you're talking like scene stealers.
It's just these little scene stealers. You know, they're not going to make the poster very often, but they're just always putting in a solid day's work, just a level above all those other kind of bit actors. And the guy that I want to give some credit to is a fellow by the name of Tim Meadows. And yeah, I know we've talked about him before, but you may not know that name. You definitely know the face. He had the funniest line in one of your favorite movies, I promise you. I mean, we can go on about like, Mean Girls, 30 Rock, Dewey Cox.
Dewey Cox is the one I think of. You don't want no part of this, Dewey. I mean, that's just a classic.
What are y'all doing in here? We're smoking reefer, and you don't want no part of this shit.
He's so funny, and he's just got this deadpan sense of humor that just slots in so perfectly everywhere. Yeah. He can just be a normal guy and then just deliver a line that sounds normal, but that's just so funny.
I have a nephew named Anthony, and I know how mad he gets when I call him Anthony. That's
a good shout, Tim Meadows. I'm gonna go a different route. I'm gonna go a guy who's always very imposing, and he was in something I saw recently, John Carroll Lynch.
Oh yeah.
Giant man.
Yeah. Probably
best known for a more comedic role in Fargo. He was the husband of Frances McDormand.
He wasn't overtly comedic in that.
No, but he's deadpan. You know, he's like he's the loving husband. He has a couple funny lines. He's a very much a side character.
Mm-hmm. I think of him most from The Invitation.
Yeah, well, that's what I just rewatched recently, and I like The Invitation. It's a good movie, and there's some good performances, and then he shows up, and it suddenly starts acting circles around everyone else in that movie, and I'm like, this is a guy on another level. The one I was thinking of that he stole every scene from is Zodiac. The Fincher's Zodiac. He shows up, he's one of the suspects. Every scene with him steals the scene, and this is a movie where he's acting across like Robert Downey Jr., Jake Gyllenhaal, like one of the best.
Mark Ruffalo, right?
One of the best, yes, Mark Ruffalo, one of the best assembly casts maybe of all time. And he's a guy you don't know the name of, acting opposite them, and totally at the same level. So that's a guy, you got to give some credit there.
It's a good shout out. Well done, John Carroll Lynch.
John Carroll Lynch, you're a big guy. You're kind of scary looking, but I want to give you a big hug. So we're going to talk about a little old movie from 1984 called Streets of Fire that has... I think I owe you an explanation. Why do we talk about this movie? Because I've never heard anyone else talk about this movie in my entire life. Streets of Fire, it kind of runs back in my family. When I was growing up, I guess my dad saw this when it came out. I think like in theaters in 1984. Right. And he went with a friend, and in his mind, this was like the greatest movie of all time. And I could definitely see being like a late, 18 or whatever it would have been in 1984. This movie has so much like stuff in it.
Yeah.
And memorable stuff that it's one of those movies that I can see living in your head as like oh yeah, that movie where Willem Dafoe wore leather overalls. What was that?
I'm glad we got to the leather overalls, like the most important part of the movie, right away.
Yeah.
Wasted no time.
And it's not the first pair of overalls either.
No.
Anyway, I could see it being that. So my dad absolutely loved this movie when it came out, and then never saw it for many years. But when flash forward to me being born, I'm growing up as a kid. Whenever it was family movie night, we're going over to Rogers Video or Blockbuster to rent a movie. This is pre-streaming. We'd be like, what do we want to watch? And my dad would always say, Streets of Fire. And it just became a running bit in our family. I didn't know what Streets of Fire was. I didn't know if that was a movie.
So when did you actually see it for the first time?
So fast forward to I was in university, and my dad visited me and brought this beautiful Shout Factory Blu-ray, this remaster of the original film that he had bought. I don't know if we got it for him for Christmas or what, but this beautiful Blu-ray, and we sat down and had a couple beers and watched it and just had the best time. I mean, I'm watching my dad relive his youth, and I'm just like, it's very fun. It's just like, what is going this is the movie all these years that you were gonna watch. But I mean, I had a blast with it. I've rewatched it several times since. Again, with my dad, with my mom, with my girlfriend. I've watched this. I've always had fun with it. So I have a very personal affinity for it. It's kind of a comfort food.
Right.
I think on a more practical level, why I picked it is I do feel like this is a movie that is just like lost to time. I've never heard anyone talk about this movie, and there's a lot of people in this movie that you feel like you would have at least heard of it. Even if people don't like it, they'd like say something about it, but it's literally just not in the public discourse.
No.
And the director, Walter Hill, who I'll talk more about, he's done a bunch of movies, but in the 80s, he did 48 Hours and The Warriors.
48 Hours is great.
And those are both movies that are very well known.
That's a really fun movie.
And this one came out right around the same time, collaborated with a lot of the same people, budget, similar level, and completely flopped. And it didn't critically flop, but it box office flopped 100%, and no one's ever talked about it since. So I kind of want to spotlight this movie because I feel like it's a weird little time machine of just like actors you would recognize in a very early thing. There's a lot of bad, there's a lot of good. It's just like a very strange mixed bag that I feel like is completely lost to time.
This movie it's an interesting example of the way that kind of the good stuff shakes out. So when we look back at the 80s, 40 years later, there's like 6 movies. There's like 6 movies that we think of. And there's a reason. Those are the really, really good ones that did everything right.
Yeah.
And this is a really cool example, an interesting example at least, of doing a lot of the same things and not doing them as well.
Yeah.
And it just kind of shakes down to the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's so visually distinctive that it's weird to me that it has been completely forgotten. I think that it's got like such kind of iconography and style that even though it fails in a bunch of regards from filmmaking, usually movies that have such distinct iconography still stick in the public mind a bit more than this does. And that's kind of what I wanted to look at and figure out, like, why did this... I mean, I have my notes for why this movie failed.
Right.
And the things I think it did great and the things it completely failed at. I want to share 2 quotes with you that I was when I was looking into this movie that I think really set up our discussion
You told me explicitly not to look into trivia and quotes on this movie, and so this better be worth it.
Our first quote, this is story time here from my notebook. Our first quote is from Walter Hill, who's the director. Walter Hill said that his desire was to make what he thought was a perfect film when he was a teenager and put in all the things that he thought were great then and which I still have a great affection for. Here are the list of those things. Custom cars.
Yep.
Kissing in the rain.
Yep.
Neon, certainly. Trains in the night.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little, I mean, they are.
There's like 1.
High-speed pursuit. Just 1. Rumbles.
There are rumbles.
There's certainly rumbles. Rock stars.
Right.
Motorcycles.
Right.
This is a really special one. Jokes in tough situations. Never has a teenager said that's something they think is cool and should be in a movie before now.
Yep, fair enough.
Leather jackets.
Right.
And then last but not least, questions of honor. And say what you will about this movie, but he certainly put all of those things in the movie.
He's you know what? The man had a vision.
Yeah.
He set out and he achieved all of those things.
He did. If this is a toy box, all those toys are literally sitting in this box.
Yeah. He wrote down all those things and then figured out how to tie them together, and that's the movie.
At whatever cost.
Yeah.
This is a quote from Jim Steinman. Jim Steinman wrote a lot of the music for the movie. He's kind of a legend in the music scene from the 70s, 80s, 90s. He wrote a lot of the big hits for Meat Loaf as well as Bonnie Tyler. So legendary music producer and songwriter himself. So this is what Jim Steinman had to say, and he references both Joel Silver and Jimmy Levine, who were producers on the film. They all worked together on a bunch of stuff. Joel Silver said, "This movie is about visuals. It's about thrills. Don't worry about the script." I remember mentioning it to 6 or 7 people that the script was trashy, and I always got the same answer. The script doesn't matter. The movie is about visuals. Then we go to first edit, the first cut of the movie in the screening room, and it's me, Jimmy Levine, and Joel Silver. And about 20 minutes into the movie, Jimmy turns to me and he goes, "This movie is really shitty, isn't it? It's really bad." I said, "Yeah, it's a really bad script. Why didn't anyone notice the script was bad? It stinks. I can't even watch it." That is, so glowing endorsements. And as much as I I don't hate watching this movie. I really love watching this movie for my own personal reasons.
Right.
I can't disagree with anything that was said about the script. Literally makes no sense, which we'll get into. It doesn't really detract from my enjoyment of the movie because it is about the visuals. He was right.
You got a real big mouth, fish.
Look, Butch, I buy and sell people more valuable than you every day.
I've kind of given my preface. What did you think about the movie? What are your first thoughts here?
So, my first thoughts about the movie were first that I watched it wrong. I mean, I watched it alone in a dark room with a notebook, paying very close attention.
Yeah.
Don't watch Streets of Fire alone in a dark room with a notebook, paying very close attention. Have 11 beers and watch it with your college roommates, and you're gonna love it.
Yeah.
It really did defeat a lot of the good parts. There were a lot of moments that I'll talk about where I'm pretty sure I would have burst out laughing if I had been not alone in a dark room with a notebook. And I am able to appreciate why it would be a cult hit with certain people, why Mr. Peter McLaughlin enjoys this movie so much. I will tell, it didn't really land for me. I'm not in the cult, but I'm able to separate myself and understand why people enjoyed this so much and why there is a lot of very creative, fun, unique things to it. And there are some high points that I will talk about. But overall, yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting illustration of what actually shook out of the 80s that was a lot better in terms of very similar movies that are direct upgrades on certain parts.
Yeah. And as much as I love this movie, I can't totally disagree.
Right.
I kind of had that suspicion that might be how you feel coming into this,
Yeah.
but it's certainly an experience, and there's things in this I've never seen,
Yeah.
and I'll never see again.
Nice, huh?
I think I've kind of already said my thoughts on this. I obviously love it. I can acknowledge all its faults. The faults of it don't bother me, which is completely biased, and I don't expect anyone else to piggyback on that. This is a movie that I have a strong affinity for and will watch many times again, but it certainly fails in a couple regards that I find funny.
Yeah.
And this is something that I want to talk about overall, is that where the movie fails, I found it funny and not boring, which is what kept this movie up for me.
It wasn't boring.
It's not boring.
It's not boring.
The greatest sin a movie can make is being boring, and even if the movie is inept in certain areas, it's not boring. And there are elements of it that elevate it extremely highly, namely the music, the visuals especially. The visuals are probably the strongest. The visuals are insanely beautiful, how it's shot, even though the dialogue is like hilariously bad at times, and that's a weird contrast.
Get me another drink.
Hey, Tom, would you get a load of this little honey? She thinks she owns the place.
Let's get into the plot. Let's talk about Streets of Fire. It opens much like Star Wars, weirdly,
Right.
by saying another time, another place, instead of a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, which I actually think I appreciate because it immediately acknowledges this is not like a real world scenario. It's like basically a graphic novel, this whole movie, and it follows comic book logic.
It's very Broadway as well.
Yeah.
Right, where they just set it up, and it's just kind of a not a real world. You just give out, there's two police, and they're not real police, and then,
Well, except for all the evil police that they kill.
Right, yeah. there's no logic to any of it, but that part was fine.
Speaking of,
It was consistent.
Speaking of Broadway, it's a self-pronounced rock and roll fable, which I think it's the only rock and roll fable because that's not a thing.
Yeah, I think you could probably pull up some like rock operas. Like I've never seen Hair. I think that might be what that is.
Yeah, but the distinct blend of like gun violence with the musical numbers and it's a subgenre of its own, and I like that they just announced that is called a rock and roll fable.
Right.
And everyone's watching's like, it makes sense. Not a thing. It opens with a concert. The concerts are probably one of the highlights of the movie. The music's amazing, and the photography of the concerts is amazing. It's like you're watching a music video. The beautiful neon light backdrop. The lip syncing's great. She's not singing. It's all lip sync. You can't tell.
It's a great performance. I immediately, when I finished the movie, went back and rewatched the opening musical number, Nowhere Fast. It's a bop. It's on my playlist now.
But yeah, Jim Steinman wrote the music. which is great. It sounds like a Meatloaf song or a Bonnie Tyler song. It fits right into that.
The term is Wagnerian rock, which I did look up, and I really enjoyed. It's a rock that has the characteristics of Wagner, the composer, writes a lot of big operatic scores. King Crimson, also throw on that list. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, that fits right into this.
Yep.
So while the concert's going on, Raven and the Bombers walk in, which is great. And you're kind of like, what's going to go on here? Because you get Willem Dafoe's face in the shadows. It looks good. It's sinister. But I'm watching it and you're like, maybe he's going to threaten them. And then it escalates so quickly.
Oh, yeah.
They wait for her to finish, which is very courteous. Then Willem Dafoe, Raven,
Yep.
which we should say, first real performance.
Yep.
He was in one movie before this that was like a real movie called The Hunger, which is a pretty well-known vampire movie from the 80s, where he played second phone booth youth.
Right.
Prior to that, he'd basically done short films, so he wasn't really a super well-known actor. Willem Dafoe rushes on stage, abducts Ellen, runs her out. You think it's over, and then the bombers go out into the street and start shooting people and blowing up cars and tearing women's clothes off and dragging people behind cars. And at this point, I was laughing because I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So we get Ellen Ames abducted and they call in Tom Cody. We're going to get into my confusion about the plot. His sister writes to him and says, you got to come because Ellen Ames was abducted.
Yeah.
And it establishes that Tom Cody and Ellen Ames had a romantic past. So he comes into town, goes to the diner his sister works at, and I guess before we can get into anything else, there's a great rumble. Just like Walter Hill wanted, there's a rumble.
There is a great rumble.
There's a wonderful rumble. The most shocking part of the rumble is not the fight itself, it's that Tom Cody stands up with a very classical Western look. He's got the trench coat, the suspenders. It's very, Walter Hill did a lot of Westerns, and this movie is clearly a Western in structure. Then he pops the trench coat up and he's got a little sleeveless number on underneath. The sleeveless with the suspenders.
And he just looks like he's 15.
It's so weird.
He's got this really deep voice and he's delivering this tough guy dialogue, which if he was doing voiceover might have been fine. But he just looks like this little high schooler with like a little wispy beard and this silly little outfit.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what?
I don't know when the right time to talk about Michael Paré is, because that's Tom Cody. That's the actor's name. He's a working actor. He's not had this was basically, I think, his biggest role. And he's been in other stuff. And when I talked to my dad about this movie, he's like, oh, Michael Paré, he was in, and then listed a bunch of stuff I've never seen.
Yeah.
So, kind of weird career for the guy. They clearly wanted, like, Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
And he's not.
Well, there's a lot of 80s action stars that we still hear about, still watch their movies, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason why Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Harrison Ford are who they are. They have this physical presence. They deliver their lines really well. They're lovable. They have they just ooze charisma, but also they're just tough and macho. And it's a tough balance to hit. And Tom Cody isn't any of those guys.
He does not. He gives a performance that at this point I can't separate from because it has its own charm to it. But it's certainly weird. He has dead eyes, like a shark.
Yeah.
And it's like he's rushing through his lines half the time. He's like, I gotta get my... And it's like...
You take the front entrance. I'm going top side. If you can work your way upstairs to help me out, fine. If not, I'll handle it.
I had to look up whether it was like ADR'd, whether it was voiceover.
Right.
There's just this little boy, and he's like mumbling, and like you said, kind of speeding, and then it sounds like Sylvester Stallone. It sounds like Rocky. He's like, oh, you gotta knock it through the window. And it's like, what? What?
And it's one of those movies where you feel like you go back and watch this movie, and you're like, certainly the lead will be someone I know that went on to have a big career. Because these movies always, if you go back and watch any movie in the 80s, everyone's like, it's a who's who of like, oh, it's so-and-so. And you watch this, you're like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Who's Michael Paré?
It's not the lead. There's a lot of bit characters that did.
This movie is star-studded with like even Diane Lane. It's one of her earliest things. She went on to have a massive career.
Yeah.
But yeah, Michael Paré, this was one of his biggest moments.
He got his shot of the plate and like hit one foul and then
he's not
awful.
He's not awful. It almost feels intentional, but it doesn't work at all. And I don't know if he was trying to be a tough guy but you picture this role with Harrison Ford, like Han Solo walking in, the roguish smuggler, and he's charismatic, but he's a tough guy, but he's also like seductive.
Yeah.
Tom Cody is like a great white shark. Like he walks in with no sleeves and starts talking like Sylvester Stallone, and you're like, who is this? What's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, don't go pointing that thing at me. I wouldn't like it.
I don't go pointing it unless I'm gonna use it.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, we gotta get back to this. He pops the sleeves off. He defends his sister from a different gang that aren't the Bombers, the Roadmasters. I had to look that up.
They got like playing cards on their back,
Yeah.
and they have slightly different haircuts. So they're visually distinct.
Again, another time, another place. This is a made-up world where there are gangs that have like themes.
He does a pretty great little scene. He takes the knife from the lead guy, and then beats up the next 7 guys with jump cuts with the coat rack. It's fantastic. I mean, I tried to be annoyed at all the cuts at some points in this movie, and there's a couple times that it gets distracting. There's no way they could have done better. I mean, this isn't the Raid. They're not gonna like.
Yeah.
I think they did a pretty darn good job of making these fight scenes compelling, given that it's a Broadway movie.
I actually thought that some of those cuts felt very contemporary. Some of the like freeze frames to black, and then like the super stylized animated intro where it looks like paint rubbing out.
Oh yeah.
Felt way more like a modern film thing than an 80s movie. Like that felt ahead of its time in a weird way because the rest of the movie kind of doesn't. So he fights them.
Destroys the restaurant.
Destroys
entirely.
the restaurant. And again, talking about innocence, he beats them all up, and they're not like unconscious, but they kind of all sulk away with their tails between their legs.
It's so 80s. Like
Yeah.
it's right out of Grease or whatever, where
Yeah.
they peel off and they're like, come on guys, we gotta get out of
Let's
here.
run, boys.
He's tough.
And Tom Cody
very
being
fun.
tough will come back.
Yeah.
So he talks to his sister. His sister's like, Ellen Aim was abducted. And he's like, I don't care. I don't care about that. And I'm like, why'd you come to town? That's why she told you to come.
That was the thing.
That's the whole thing. So he gets in his car, and the cops pull him over and talk to him. And there's a great line where the cops say he's a real tough guy. The evidence for which is that he had a gun in his glove compartment.
Yeah.
Like 10 years ago. I'm like,
He's always been a real badass. I busted him a couple of years ago. He had a pistol in the glove compartment of his car.
the Bombers just like dragged people behind cars. I think you're allowed to have a gun in your glove compartment. This doesn't seem like a justification for a real badass.
I mean, they never really spend a lot of time trying to build up his backstory. They throw away a couple of lines, and every time they do, I'm annoyed and confused and just want them to move on.
Yeah, he was in the military.
Yeah, it's fine.
He used to know Ellen Aim. That's all that matters.
He liked the shooting guns part of the military.
Yeah, how'd you like the army?
I like shooting at guns, but I didn't win no medal.
Speaking of the military, so he's reluctant to save Ellen Aim. He says, I don't want to do it. So he goes to the bar to drink. He meets McCoy, who's one of the good characters. I think she actually did a really good job. Interestingly enough, she was originally a male character.
Yeah,
It was a guy named Mendez. And then Amy Madigan just did such a good job in the audition. And they were like, do you want to play? We'll just rewrite it as McCoy. They have a very fast friendship. They go from like not knowing each other to leaving the bar and like being best pals in about 2 minutes. And I don't care. It's fine.
So you liked her.
I thought she was good.
Okay. I thought she had by far the worst dialogue.
Oh, okay.
I was annoyed every time she talked, and I don't think it was her fault. I think she did the best she could as like a weird archetype of a character at a time when like female action stars and lesbians weren't in movies.
Yeah.
And there were some fun parts, but they gave her so many just annoying generic. Every time anything happened, she just starts spouting the lines like that.
What do you mean, mister? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know.
Over and over. And
What about you, McCoy?
We're gonna do it or we're gonna talk about it.
Fair enough. I don't know. I liked her. I guess I'm also just comparing her to Michael Paré, so it's not like
she's more
know.
charismatic, and she's almost more of a lead than he is.
Yeah.
But funnily enough, before he meets her and like the introduction to her, he meets Clyde the bartender, played by a young Mr. Bill Paxton.
good old Bill Paxton.
Absolute scene stealer of a guy who's he's like out of Happy Days. He's like this weird, he doesn't feel like he fits the setting that well, but he's like the townsfolk.
Yeah, he's like missing a tooth. He's the bartender.
Which is really badly done. It's clearly like Sharpie on the tooth.
I love seeing Bill Paxton. Rest in peace, Bill Paxton. Died a couple years ago.
Pour one out.
Pops up in all kinds of stuff in the 80s. I always think of him from Aliens.
Yeah.
But he has a very small part in this. This was also very early in his career.
You know, everywhere I go, there's always an asshole.
They become friends. She asks if she can crash, so Cody just invites her to stay at his sister's place where he's crashing.
Yep.
It kind of implies she's a lesbian. I mean, this is like before they would probably say that.
It was a pretty heavy wink wink where she's like, oh, you're not my type.
Yeah. And I don't think Cody got it, but
No.
we as the audience, especially now. I thought it was, I mean, whether or not you liked her or not, it's cool to see like lesbian action representation in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I like that it was just because the director really liked her.
You may have a rough time with this one, and I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you're not my type.
McCoy and Cody go back to his sister's house. We get our second really great fashion look for Tom Cody.
Yeah.
Where now he's not even sporting the shirtless vest. He's just got the overalls on. He goes in to talk to McCoy and his sister. He would have had to take the overalls off, take the shirt off, and then put the overalls back on to do that.
Yeah. A long line of excellent Broadway things in this movie. The outfit changes are spectacular. Like the costume designer had a blast.
Yeah.
Can we just do like a little montage of some of the highlight outfits at some point?
We will. Of course we will. The suspenders are the highlight. The shirtless suspenders, you got sleeveless suspenders, leather suspenders.
Yeah.
Those are really special. There's a lot of great stuff. So about 5 minutes ago in the movie, Tom Cody was saying, I'm not going to save Ellen Aim.
Right.
Then he goes to his bedroom and thinks about her singing a song, and then comes up to his sister and says, all right, I'll save her.
Yeah.
Okay, you got it. I'm gonna go and get her.
And the audience was waiting with bated breath, thinking that he might just head back to whence he came.
Yes.
And the movie be over, so.
So then he goes to meet Billy Fish, who's Ellen Aim's current boyfriend
Yeah.
and music producer and manager.
Who we do see at the start.
Yes.
And is in fact played by Rick Moranis.
Canada's own Rick Moranis.
And I believe his first movie role. He had just done SCTV at that point. And
Right.
The Mackenzie brothers.
I mean, talk about looking like you're 15.
Yeah.
He's-
Well, I mean, he still does now.
He does now, that's true. Yeah, Rick Moranis shows up. He is great in this because for the dialogue that this movie has, it's great to just have Rick Moranis be the guy to say it. If someone has to say it, at least he's just like Rick Moranis.
Yeah, I want to talk about Rick Moranis for a bit because, I mean, he's a problem in the movie. He's horribly miscast, in my opinion, because he's just too dang good. He's so charismatic. He's delivering these lines where he's supposed to be like the jerk.
Right,
And you're supposed
right,
to hate
right.
him. And I like him so much better than Tom Cody.
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm plenty good enough, and I ain't gonna let you down.
Listen, Skirt, let me make it simple for you. Take a hike.
It's not like there needs to be this elaborate tension setup, but he didn't quite get to the point of you know, some comedic actors can get away with being scumbags, right? Your Adam Sandlers and such. He can't.
Right.
He's this little sweetie, and I just want to pinch his cheek, and I feel bad whenever a bad thing happens to him, no matter how many jerk dialogue lines they give to him.
That's funny because I thought he did a good job being a total dick in this.
I don't blame him.
Yeah.
I think he did great, but he's just clearly so much better of an actor and so much more charismatic than all of his scene partners.
He definitely is.
It just gets to that point where I'm like, oh, I love him.
Yeah. He has one of his first lines when he meets Tom Cody. He says, "You sound pretty dumb, but you're not that dumb."
Look, Cody, you sound pretty dumb, but nobody's that dumb. I'm the one paying you. That means you go get her, I wait here, and you bring her back to me.
So Billy Fish agrees to join because we should bring this up. Billy Fish is gonna pay Tom Cody to rescue Ellen Aim because it's his girlfriend. So he offers him thousands of dollars to rescue Ellen Aim.
He's very rich, which he talks about a
Super
lot.
rich. And that is relevant to the plot later.
Yeah.
So Tom Cody says Billy Fish has to join because Ellen Aim's been taken to a bad part of town called the Battery at a bar called Torchy's.
It's a real knockdown joint, no class. I used to book bands in there. It's right in the middle of a big factory. It's the shits.
So Billy Fish, McCoy, and Cody go to Torchy's, which is where they're going to rescue Ellen Aim.
Right.
We do get a great musical number here. Maybe my favorite, maybe not my favorite. It's very different than the Ellen Aim and the Attack. Speaking of which, Ellen Aim and the Attackers. I forgot to. You got to wear the merch for the tour. This is like a.
That's not what this is.
That doesn't say Ellen Aim and the Attackers.
Maybe it does. You don't know.
We don't know either. Yeah, they go to Torchy's. There's a great band performance that was very fun, more like jazz stuff and really fast moving. I'm not sure who that band was, but they were great.
He just hangs on the corner singing old country blues. Oh, one band stud.
And you skipped over one little part to get to the bar.
Right.
Which was The little cameo. You catch who that guy was? The crazy homeless
Oh,
man?
I was getting to that.
Okay.
I was still there.
All right.
We have a cameo from Ed Begley Jr.
We do.
What the hell's that?
Mr. Stan Sitwell himself.
Yes, Mr. Stan Sitwell. He's been on like pretty much everything Christopher Guest has ever done.
Yeah.
So he should. I mean, it's one of those names. We'll put up a picture of him here. You'll be like, oh, that guy. Yeah. Ed Begley Jr. I think in his first movie role.
Really?
I think it was like super early.
Okay. See, I would have thought he already had a career at that point.
I think this is maybe TV. I don't know.
And like
I'm probably gonna be wrong. I'll be honest, but it was
No.
very early for him. He looks young. Like,
Well, the foresight to put someone in like an 8-second speaking role. Like he has like 5 lines as this weird homeless guide man.
Yeah.
This little Tom Bombadil. But he's great.
Oh, you're dumb. And you're short. Real short.
So they go to Torchy's. Oh, this is our next overall point.
Yeah.
Raven walks out in leather overalls. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Really, really nice stuff there.
And I love the proto Defoe. Because like his dialogue's not great in this. It's not kind of what you would hope it to be. He doesn't have the presence. He's, there's no "you're fond of me lobster" here, but
You're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
Drunken in a Virginia fence.
I seen it.
the faces, man. The
Well,
faces.
yeah, and he also has like 10 lines maybe. He's
Yeah.
Barely.
Looks like I finally ran into someone that likes to play as rough as I do.
You hire him for the look.
And boy, that look.
You're
man.
No other person on planet Earth looks like that.
There's a short list of people who you're like, oh, that's the villain from like, you could pick any frame of him in this entire movie.
Yeah.
And you're like, they gotta get him.
I wonder if that's Tom Cody.
From now on, either of you make any mistakes, I'm making you walk home.
Walk? I'm not gonna walk around here. I'd get killed.
You got it.
I have a very weird connection here. I want to talk about Bone Tomahawk very quickly.
Okay,
Which
let's
you
do it.
know,
Yeah.
Bone Tomahawk was one of my favorite movies of all time. Like literally top 10 movies for me. I absolutely adore it.
It isn't a boast, but a fact.
Michael Paré is in Bone Tomahawk.
As who?
When the scene where they're in the saloon planning to go rescue the main person, the main like Patrick Wilson's wife.
Yeah, they're talking to the native guy from Fargo. He's like telling him about it. It's
And that actor, that indigenous guy's name's Zan McClarnon, who's been in a million things. He's amazing.
He's so good, yeah.
He's giving exposition about where they can find the cannibals that abducted her. And there's like Kurt Russell and Matthew Fox and Richard Jenkins on the bar. And there's one other guy.
And that's Michael
His name's like
Paré?
Mr. Wallington. And he's in the scene, he has lines, but it's a line where at the end they're like, we'll need a map of the territory. And he's like, yeah, I'll get you the map.
He's got no kin in Bright Hope.
I'll have him blessed and put underground.
Appreciate it.
And most of the scene, he's behind like a post. But there's no way. So why I'm bringing it up now is there's a part in Streets of Fire right here when they're going to Torchy's, and he's standing next to like a steam chimney, and it goes off, and I swear it makes the sound that the cannibal sound make in Bone Tomahawk when they have the throat whistles. It was like, I heard it, and I'm like, that's the same sound. In Bone Tomahawk, they have these like bone things in their neck that makes them make this screaming whistle. I swear it sounded exactly like that sound. You need to tell us, I always forget his name, S. Craig Zoller, the director of Bone Tomahawk.
Right.
I'm on to you. You love Streets of Fire. Why else would you hire Michael Paré? That's so strange. Right? And not give me, and like just basically as a cameo, and even credited in Bone Tomahawk, it's like Mr. Wallington, but parentheses as Michael Paré, which is normally what you do for cameos.
Yeah.
Not like an actual role.
I'm the one who fetched your wife and got her involved.
We're at Torchy's. McCoy gets inside. She holds up Raven at gunpoint. At the same time, Cody spots her through a window. And then...
Spots Ellen Aim through a window.
Yes, sorry. Spots Ellen Aim through a window. Then he starts...
She's tied to a bed.
Yeah.
And like literally in like an evening gown and roped to the bed, which is of course how you keep prisoners.
Let's talk about... We got to talk about innocence again.
Yeah.
Because it's clearly implied that Willem Dafoe has brought her here. And it's got some very unsavory vibes. She's tied to a bed. You're like, I think I know where this is going to be going. but then he just tries to give her like a little kiss.
It's Broadway.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And he says like, you're gonna love me for a couple weeks, then I'll let you go. And I was like, he seems more like Bowser than like a bad guy. Like he just like stole the princess. Yeah. And he's just gonna keep her, and then she'll get out. He'll like, I'll get her again.
It did occur to me during the movie, like, so why did Willem Dafoe kid? And then I got about halfway through that sentence and said, I don't care.
Yeah, it's Ellen Aim.
Yeah, you gotta get her.
Yeah.
You act nice, you and me fall in love for a week or two, and then I let you go. Nobody gets hurt.
Tom Cody starts blowing up everything in sight. He's sitting on a roof and he starts shooting his rifle and blows up.
This wonderful PG violence where he's just shooting motorcycles which erupt into flame while the guy goes, ah, and walks away off it. Totally fine.
But like 24 motorcycles. Like, it's like a lot of blowing up.
That must have been a lot of the budget of this movie. It was blowing up 24 motorcycles.
They rescue Ellen Aim. They manage to get Ellen Aim in the car, Billy Fish, McCoy. And then Tom Cody's like, you go on without me. I'm going to stay and rough him up a bit.
Right.
And he just stays and keeps like fighting guys who are on fire and shooting more motorcycles. I'm like, oh, what? And then the only reason that happens in the script is it's him and Raven can have like a showdown where Raven's like, who are you? And he's like, my name's Tom Cody. I live at this address. Here's my phone number. And Raven's like, I'll come get you.
And then Tom Cody's like still holding a gun at this point, and Raven's just there like shirtless in his weird leather overalls.
He's like, you're lucky I don't have a gun. I'm like, but he has a gun.
Yeah.
So,
well, Tom Cody's honorable, you see.
He's honorable. He's tough, but he's honorable.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael Paré.
He's just gonna kill all the unnamed characters. That's honorable.
They drive away. Tom Cody steals a motorcycle, joins up with them. He says they have to ditch the car. And I was like, why? But I don't. They ditch the car so that they can have a scene where they split up the group where Billy Fish and McCoy go in an elevator, and Ellen Aim and Tom Cody go in the stairs. And Ellen Aim is basically mad at Tom Cody because she's figured out that he got paid to do this. He didn't do this out of love.
Right.
Which is kind of like the central conflict between them in the movie. But again, I'm like, they haven't seen each other in like 2 years.
She's dating
Billy Fish, who's paying for it.
Yep.
At this, I guess maybe I'll say it for the end, but the entire motivation of Tom Cody and why the whole plot happens is the central thing of when you look at it, you're like, what are they doing? What happened?
Yeah.
But anyways, so they set that up, that Billy Fish is jealous that Tom Cody and her used to have a fling, and that there's still some kind of romantic tension between Tom Cody and Ellen Aim. Surprise. Dreamy Michael Paré.
What was I supposed to do? I had all that work. Things were going real good. Things were starting to happen for me.
Yeah, so bye-bye Tom, right?
And I'm just sitting here like, I would have gone for Rick Moranis still.
True.
He has this little moment in the elevator where he's like clearly hurt. And it's supposed to be like, oh yeah, Tom Cody's winning her back. Take that, Billy Fish. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, Rick Moranis. You'll find someone better.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, she's with me now.
Yeah, right. Against a big, tough, good-looking guy like you, Cody don't stand a chance.
This is kind of the second act of the movie, which is the part where I'd be going to the bathroom and getting snacks. Yeah. I just kind of wrote interlude, where there's first of all a great song called Sorcerer.
Yep.
And when I heard it the first time, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that Stevie Nicks was on this. It's not, but she wrote it.
Okay.
And my goodness, does it sound like a Stevie Nicks Fleetwood Mac song. It was like immediately, I was like, that's something's jingling back here.
Mm-hmm.
So the song is good. Then the rest of the section's kind of dull. They pick up a random fan, like a fan of Ellen Aim.
Yep.
Who just joins them.
It's like, has to be like a producer's daughter or something.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. She literally does nothing for the rest of the movie.
No.
It's just this fan who's like, I'm a fan. And then she follows them.
Yeah.
Then they find the Sorrells, which is a group of musicians. They're like a cappella, like barbershop quartet kind of rock band. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a lot of bands like this from the 80s. Like this was like a whole genre of itself.
Also, as soon as I saw them, I was like, oh, that must be a real band that's cameoing.
No, I think the three guys were musicians and the one guy was an actual actor.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But I truly, the movie becomes kind of the tribulations of the Sorrells, not to the script, but to me watching it, because they pull over with their bus. Tom Cody threatens them at gunpoint, and then they steal their bus, but they force them to come with them. Mm-hmm. And for this section of the movie, they're avoiding the cops, who were I don't know what cops, because the battery where the blew up Torchies, there was no cops. There was only bombers, and they killed everyone.
Yeah, and it was clearly like a gang hideout.
Yeah.
And
But the fan is like, the cops are looking for people on the streets. So they steal the bus. The Sorrells, I felt horrible for. They're like this band who's like not rich, is clearly like trying to make it in this town. Their buses run down. And this is you said you like Billy Fish? The last straw for Billy Fish is when the bus breaks down. He's like, those low and dirty Sorrells can't even get their bus to work properly. I'm like, you stole their bus. You can't make fun of these poor men.
Yeah.
The famous Sorrell sure put a lot of money into that bus, huh?
Well, the weird thing about the Sorrells is that it feels like this is where you put the real band. Because like they have just such this like shoehorned in cameo where if this was, I don't know, like the Four Tops or whoever it would have been in the 80s, like, I don't know, Boys to Men or whoever it
Or I was
is.
even thinking like, it's more like the Ink Spots. Like that's like the 50s, but it's that kind of band. Like
Yeah.
you can do like, yeah.
But like if you have them in there, then you're having fun. You're like, oh look, it's them, and they're acting, but it's not.
No.
And it's just like, why are they in the movie?
And it's kind of dark. They're like talking amongst themselves, like, what are we gonna do? We're being abducted.
And again, it's like kind of funny if it's like, oh, they're holding up like Little Richard at gunpoint. Like that's funny. But then it's just, why are they in the movie?
And there is one line that I almost think alludes to the fact that like they struggle in a way Ellen Aim didn't because they're 4 black men in the 80s. Because she says like, I know making it in this town is tough. And the guys in the back are like, I told you she wouldn't get it. Like they're like these like Billy Fish and Ellen Aim do not understand what we're going through. And it's like, yeah, that sucks. And also Tom Cody held you at gunpoint.
Yeah, that's what you're going through, is that our protagonist is like gonna kill them.
It's really weird. They get stopped by the cops. I don't know why the Sorrells aren't like, help! But they don't.
Yeah.
The cops are like, Billy Fish tries to bribe them. They take the bribe, but then they're like, we're gonna turn you in anyways. And then, of course, Tom Cody kills them all. He doesn't kill them, because it's PG, but he blows up every single car.
Yeah.
And then they get away.
Right.
And pretty much that section, from the song Sorcerer starting all the way through to them getting stopped by the police and then evading them, I'm like, I just wrote boring and slow.
Yeah.
Because this movie, that is the part of the movie that just, they're writing the script and they're like, okay, Ellen Aim's abducted, Tom Cody's gonna rescue her, and then we'll have a confrontation at the end of the movie where Raven comes back and fights Tom Cody.
And they're like, oh, but sir, that's only gonna be 48 minutes. He's like, eh.
They're like, what if they abduct a bus full of musicians and drive around for a while?
Make some calls, see if we can get a good cameo for the musicians. Oh, we can't.
They're all taken.
Oh.
Let's shoot it anyways.
You are the one love in my life. I know you.
So they ditch the bus. Again, they ditch the bus because it's the cops. They get on the subway. The Sorrells at this point are literally being kidnapped.
Yeah.
The Sorrells are like, what are we gonna do? Our bus we don't have our bus. We're like 100 miles from our next gig.
We had $1,000 in that bus. I lost my clothes, the luggage is gone, all the sheet music is gone.
And they get back to, what did I say it was? The Richmond. They get back to the Richmond. These cops don't care. No. They're just happy Ellen Aim's been rescued. So these are different. These are good cops, are Richmond cops.
See, it kind of, I don't want to say made sense, but yeah, there's the Torchies cops, and they're on the payroll of Raven's gang.
Fair enough. Okay.
And then there's the Richmond cops who they you know, it feels very localized in a way that old movies and plays kind of did, where the cops aren't this like big unified force that's against everyone. It's like you kind of knew your cops, and
yeah. And if you think of this as a Western, they went to the other town where the sheriff's crooked. I guess, yeah. You're right. You're right. Avery, you love Streets of Fire too much. You gotta relax.
I'm all in, baby.
Stop making excuses.
Yeah, that's all I gotta say. What else do you want to hear?
So he meets up with his sister, and his sister gives this really weird, convoluted speech where she's like, I told you to go get Ellen Aim, not for the money, but because I want you to fight for something. If you're gonna fight, you should fight for something.
It was a lot of this like AI-generated movie dialogue. Where it's like, no, you need to honor, and not for the money, but love, and together, and it's like, it doesn't make any, but it's like they're saying kind of the right words.
They are,
like, yeah, that's fine.
Well, you know what Walter Hill wanted in his script? Questions of honor.
There you go.
She doesn't seem real thankful.
Yeah, one thing about you, Cooler, you catch on real quick.
Yeah, that's right, buddy, and I get the job done.
Everyone's happy that Ellen Aim's been rescued, but Raven's head goon shows up and says like, hey, Raven wants Tom Cody, because Tom Cody told him where he lives and what his name is.
Right, yeah.
So he's gonna come here, and Tom Cody and Raven have to fight. And then the police at this point tell Tom Cody to get out of town. They're like, Raven's gonna come here to fight just you.
Yep.
So leave. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then you're like, okay. So Tom Cody goes over to Ellen and Billy's apartment. He confronts them. The fan is still there.
Yeah.
The groupie. And he's even like, why are you here? And she's like, I'll see you guys later. And I was like, what?
Again, has to be a producer's kid.
Has to be.
It has to be something like that.
Cody makes it very clear where he says, I'm taking what I owe McCoy, but I'm not taking my money.
Yeah.
And basically announcing his love for Ellen Aim. So Ellen Aim leaves Billy Fish very quickly. She really was looking for an excuse. She's like, the second he leaves the room, she's like, sorry, Billy, and then just leaves.
It's the end of Wet Hot.
Yeah. They go outside and have a big kiss.
I love you, Gerald Cooperberg.
And then it cuts to them post, presumably sex, and they are the wettest people I have ever seen.
That's 80s sex scenes, man.
Oh my God.
They just spray them down.
It looked like they'd been blasted with a hose. The bed's bone dry, and these two actors are drenched.
Yeah, it's some good 80s sex. I don't know what to tell you.
So they hatch a plan to leave town together. The cops are like, get out of town. The only risk to anyone's safety is if you're here, Tom Cody, because Raven only wants you.
Yep.
They don't set up that the Raven's gonna like destroy the town if he can't get Cody.
Maybe reasonable, given that he did that earlier on less motivation.
But that's not what's going on.
Yeah.
So this probably brings to my favorite part in the movie, which is that Tom Cody gets McCoy in on this plan. And McCoy, Tom Cody, and Ellen Aim are on a train leaving town, and Tom Cody exacts his plan, where he gets Ellen Aim to stand up and says, you're gonna have to leave town for a while. And then he punches her straight in the face.
So hard.
And knocks her unconscious.
There's something back in the Richmond I gotta take care of.
What are you talking about?
You get as far from here as you can.
The first time I watched this movie, I literally like jaw dropped and then laughed hysterically. I'm like, there is no way that's the direction they decided to go for this.
This was such a moment of I wish I was drunk with a bunch of friends watching this. Just alone in a dark room taking notes. I was like, what? Who shot this?
What are you talking about?
Really? That's the best. Anyway.
It's so stupid.
It's hilarious.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's the dumbest thing because he literally could just leave with her.
Or just like tell her.
Yeah, like, hey, get out.
If I was gonna argue.
Yeah, get out of town.
Yeah.
And then I'll come tomorrow.
They definitely didn't establish that she's like, no, I'm staying with you at all costs. Like,
he just punches her.
What are you talking about?
So that happens. The train punch, as I've written in all caps here. Again, mixed messages. Unclear why he needs to go fight Raven. Like, it's just an ego battle at this point. It's just his ego, he needs to fight him. There's no actual reason that he needs to do that.
No, sorry. On the train punch, there's a scene I forgot to talk about earlier. In that rumble at the very start, he slaps the guy in the face 28 times.
Oh, yeah.
And we did not talk about that.
We didn't talk about the slap.
He's
like, like just back and forth.
Like so many times, while the whole gang's
They're all
just standing
watching,
around.
like a video game fight.
I remembered because I wrote those two things down next to each other, that as things that I really wish I was with a bunch of people to watch and to confirm this is in fact what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And his slaps are right followed by his butterfly knife trick.
Yeah.
He doesn't use the knife, but he makes them know how cool he is.
Try it again, punk.
Well, it happens 11 or 12 times. The director must have thought it's really cool to just throw away a weapon.
Yeah,
but like, there's usually motivation to that.
We got a couple more of those coming up.
There's more coming.
There's more throwaway weapons.
He just throws away the weapon and then fights him the honorable way. It's a question of honor.
It's a question of honor. He's Tom Cody. Yeah. Trains in the night.
Right.
Rumbles.
Establishes as his character motivation, he loves guns and loves shooting guns. Throws them away at every chance.
Not against Raven, he doesn't.
I got the gun.
I can get guns, smart guy, lots of them.
So Raven shows up to the Richmond with all the bombers. There's like 500 bombers. Tom Cody shows up dressed as Shrek. I think it's Raven brings the sledgehammers for the sledgehammer fight.
Yeah.
Or his head goon gives them the sledgehammers.
Yeah.
And then they have the lamest sledgehammer fight, because most of the choreography of the movie's good. And I actually
shot around.
Like, it's good, it's fine.
Yeah. The fights look good for what the movie is.
The sledgehammer fight, you think, I mean, first of all, it is worth watching. It is laugh out loud funny to see Willem Dafoe in leather overalls fight someone with a sledgehammer. That's worth the price of admission.
It seemed like they're just trying to do Star Wars.
It did. This looked like a lightsaber fight.
It looked like a really bad lightsaber fight.
It did. It's weirdly boring.
Yeah.
Want to know the best part? Took 4 weeks to shoot.
Come on. Why?
2 weeks with Willem Dafoe and Michael Paré, and 2 more weeks with the stunt doubles.
It's so bad.
It's so slow.
There's
now,
400 people standing around watching these guys just...
It's bad.
You get a lot of close-ups of Willem Dafoe's face as he's straining with the... And Michael Paré is a great white shark.
Yeah.
It's,
They also fall into about 500 motorcycles. There's like a smash cut of them fall, like a domino effect of motorcycles crashing. But then I want to give the movie some credit for this fight. They eventually drop, as you said, they throw away the weapons.
Yeah, again.
They decide, you know what, sledgehammers, not honorable, question of honor. Throw those bad boys away.
I promise you, when the director was 6, he saw this in a Western where it's like Clint Eastwood had the gun and said no.
Yeah.
And it was the coolest thing he'd ever seen.
Yeah.
And when he made a movie, he was putting that in every 8 minutes.
And it was the coolest thing ever again.
Yeah.
They throw away the sledgehammers, and then they have a fist fight, which is actually well choreographed and looked like a good fight, which is hilarious that the fist fight's better than the sledgehammer fight.
Right.
But I guess it's easier to choreograph. It's a pretty good fist fight. There's also a good final stinger of you think Willem Dafoe's going to keep fighting, and he gives him the gentle push and falls over. I mean, Streets of Fire didn't invent that gag.
No.
But it was fun. That was a very cute way to end the fight. Overall, terrible sledgehammer fight, good fist fight.
Averaged out. Then all of the entire town runs out with 800 Winchester rifles to run the gang out of town again.
Again.
You could have done that a while ago.
It is also like the most Western thing.
It is.
That the town posse shows up and the cops like need the support because there's 2 policemen.
It's not 8 guys. It is every single person in town.
Yeah. Including Bill Paxton.
More people that have been on screen except at the concert scene.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it took 4 weeks to shoot. You better get a lot of extras.
Let's get out of here!
So yes, sorry, I did forget the posse of 8,000 guys with Winchester rifles. Then we smash cut to the final concert.
Smash cut to the concert.
I mean, thank God the Sorrells got an opening gig. I mean, they kind of owed it to them, but the Sorrells get to open for Ella Name. They do a nice little musical number. It's great. There is a moment between Tom Cody and Billy Fish, and this was probably the best acting from at least Michael Paré in the whole movie, where he's basically there. And this part of the movie showed a lot of maturity and restraint. I thought certainly they'd get together at the end, Tom Cody and Ella Name.
Yeah.
But he's basically like, I'm leaving town.
It's a Western. He's got to ride his horse on out of here.
And he's like, Billy, you're a stand-up guy, take good care of her. And Billy's like, what am I gonna do? Like, she still loves you. And he actually has a great line where he says, she'll get over it. Which I felt like, isn't that literally what they say in Fleabag? Like, 30 years later, that's like the big, anyways, I think Fleabag stole from Streets of Fire is what I'm saying. So.
Everything did.
Everything did.
And she needs me, but she loves you.
She'll get over it.
They have that little moment, and then Tom Cody goes over, talks to Ella Name, tells her he's leaving. And it makes sense. This is a part of the script that made 100% sense. He's like, look, you're having a music career take off. I'm a gun-toting cowboy. This doesn't make sense. Billy Fish will take good care of you. We should break up. And I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And then he does leave.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? That's a good ending. I actually really like that ending over a kind of sappy, sentimental, she leaves Billy Fish, blah, blah, blah.
It's a Western ending. You never stay with the girl. And I think the director probably had visions of 11 more Tom Cody movies taking over Hollywood, and he can't be tied down for those.
We'll talk about the planned trilogy in a second.
Oh, I was right.
We'll talk about the planned trilogy and the eventual sequel that did happen.
Oh, no.
Stay tuned. So Tom Cody goes out into the audience, and she does her final musical number.
And by this point, I was just...
Yeah, and this is...
It rocks. It absolutely does.
How am I forgetting the name of the final song? Because it's my favorite song. Oh, no.
We're leaving all of this in while you struggle with this.
Going Nowhere Fast is the first song.
Yeah.
And then the last song... No! What's it called?
I'm just going to leave it. I'm not going to tell you.
You have to tell me.
I'm not going to tell you.
I listened to this song like 10 times today.
Is it... Tonight is what it means
Tonight
to be
is
young?
what it means to be young. I had it right away, and there was no amount of time cut out of that.
Good.
Tonight is what it means to be young. Banger. Absolute certified banger. Full-on Bonnie Tyler-esque musical number.
Bonnie Tyler's so good.
Bonnie Tyler's so good, and this is basically a Bonnie Tyler song.
Yeah.
I mean, Jim Steinman wrote it.
Yep.
He wrote I Need a Hero. It's the same song almost.
Yeah.
The Sorrells come back, and I can't deny that when they're singing this and the chorus comes on, and the Sorrells come back out and sing with her, and Tom Cody gives one kind of final nod and leaves out the doors, I forget everything this movie does wrong. I'm just like, God damn it, Streets of Fire, you did it again. I'll watch you again next year.
Son of a bitch, I'm in.
It's a great little ending, and it basically fades to black at that point. Well, it does set up the McCoy and Cody get in the car and go up to have future adventures together for the planned sequel and trilogy.
I really want to hear about this.
That would never come. That would never come. Well, the trilogy that they planned would never come. The sequel will come many, many years later in a movie called Road to Hell. Have you heard, I assume you haven't heard anything about this.
I hadn't heard of Streets of Fire. There's no way I've heard of Road to Hell.
Road to Hell came out in like 2010?
Oh, no.
Yeah, like not that long ago. Maybe it might even be after 2010. Like it's not, and it is, are you familiar with a director named Albert Pyun?
No.
Albert Pyun is a legend in the B-movie space from the 80s.
Okay.
He did such movies as Cyborg, Nemesis, Arcade, and he's actually pretty well known for like having a budget of $500, making a pretty good sci-fi apocalypse thing.
Okay.
There's actually a great Redlettermedia video, a Best of the Worst episode, highlighting Albert Pyun.
Okay.
Because he recently died, and they did like a special episode where they watched his movies, and even their consensus was like, these are bad B movies, but he put in a level of effort no one else was.
Okay.
Tragically, Albert Pyun directed Road to Hell, the sequel to Streets of Fire.
He must have been like 80, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
like he died of cancer, so I don't know if he died, like he might not have been super old, but he was not a young guy.
Sure.
I looked at the trailer, we'll show you some here. It doesn't look like a movie.
Okay.
It looks like a borderline porno. Michael Paré is in it.
Oh, no.
And Deborah Van, I can't remember her name, but his sister, Deborah Van Valkenburg, I think her name is, the actress who plays his sister in Streets of Fire, she's back.
She wasn't busy, I'm sure.
It looks like they shot it in her house, because she has like a grayscale green screen background that looks like they interviewed her like it's like Band of Brothers, but it's Streets of Fire.
Yeah.
No one has seen this movie. It doesn't even have a rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
God.
It's apparently just terrible and a very sad follow-up to this venture.
At least this was fun. Streets of Fire was so much fun. Everyone had fun involved in this movie.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So don't watch Road to Hell, I don't think.
No.
Based on the trailer alone. I mean, I'm glad Michael Paré got another shot. I don't know how this possibly happened, though. With Albert Pyun directing, one of the last movies Albert Pyun did before he died, it's weird that this happened.
Is this one of those, like, Fantastic Four, they had to shoot a movie to keep the rights?
The rights to Streets of Fire?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Like, in case we want to use it? I don't know.
Look, if you ever need something, I'll be there.
That's Streets of Fire. We've gotten through the entire movie. Is there anything we didn't talk about during the plot that you kind of wanted to get some thoughts out about?
I was ready to be more bothered by the setting and kind of the lack of logic to the world than I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't. I thought it was just a lot of fun, and I feel like I would be looking for ways to kind of pick apart and like find flaws and failures in kind of the way they set things up and the logic of the world and the setting, and I didn't really find that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of celebrate that they did a pretty darn good job of, they took things seriously when they needed to and just glossed over things when they could, and it was fine. It was fine.
I think it's the graphic novel again.
Yeah,
it's
graphic novel.
And actually by saying another time, another place at the beginning, it lets your brain go of all those questions like that you would ask like that. Those things you would normally poke, it's like, okay, they said it. It's not a real world, and...
Well, I think a great counterexample is a movie by the name of The Dark Knight Rises, where they want to achieve that setting, and they work really hard to set it up logically, why, okay, all the cops, they go underground and they get stuck because there's a thing, but then it was every single...
Right.
And they're trying to get to this place...
The scope just balloons.
Where they can just shoot whatever they want, and it's like, just don't. Just do the fun part. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that Streets of Fire, it was set very well, and the amount of logic and planning in the setting was just right.
Yeah, and then like we said earlier, the most important thing, other than the tragic kidnapping of the Sorrells, there's nothing that's really boring.
No.
And I would say, on top of that, the visuals, Walter Hill wrote and directed it. I give him no points for the writing. It is a bad script, but the direction is awesome. The energy behind the camera is extremely high, and you're always engaged. The camera work is excellent. Everything about the visuals of this are pretty stunning, and I think if you listen to this movie literally on mute, it would be like a great showcase for a director.
That's also true. And like the more I think about it and the more we talk about it, the more I think if you literally just swap Michael Paré out for Sylvester Stallone, this is one of the best movies of the 80s. I genuinely think that.
Yeah.
Not like that it would have won Oscars, but that this would now be up there with Predator and RoboCop and Commando and all these just like dad movies that made it out and that everyone loves.
I think if you swap Michael Paré out for Stallone or Harrison Ford, and you clean up some of the nonsense parts of the script, and I'm not even saying, like, it sounds ridiculous, but Streets of Fire is somehow too complicated when it comes to character motivations. Cut it out. Tom Cody doesn't know any of these people, and he's hired as a gun, and him and Ellen Aim fall in love.
Yeah.
Do that.
That's fine.
Harrison Ford's your lead. This is probably a movie that stands the test of time. People are still talking about today.
Yeah.
But it's like, it just didn't quite stick the landing enough to be held amongst those. And
yeah, it was just too shaky around the edges, and that center force of Michael Paré. I'm sure he's a lovely guy. He didn't have what it takes to carry a bunch of mediocre crap the way that Harrison Ford, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone absolutely did.
That being said, I do love this movie still. Despite all its faults, like I said, my brain washes over all the bad when I watch this. I'm just enjoying the visuals, enjoying the music. Even its faults have their own charms to me at this point.
And the music is so good. The music is just incredible. I am not a person who loves music scenes in movies. Usually I'm on my phone when there's the concert part, even if it's a band I like.
Right.
Those parts of my brain don't connect. This movie, I wanted to stand up and mosh for like the first and last concert.
Yeah.
And like the soundtrack all the way through, which, maybe I'll talk about it a little bit later, spoiler alert, but the music is just, music is awesome. It's so good. And it's not an era of music that like, I don't listen to a lot of 80s power rock stuff. Like that's not my genre, but it really props up a lot of stuff. And just the tone that it sets at the start and the feeling it leaves with you at the end, really, like it's just dragging the movie up by the ends, by the edges.
All right, I think it's that time of the evening, Avery.
It's time to get to those there reviews.
Time to get to those there reviews. I mean, you're just going to be mad at me for mine, so you need to go first.
I'm going to go first. I mean, there's a lot of parts of this movie I enjoyed, and I like talking about it. And critically, I'm going to give this movie a C+. I think that it's a heavily flawed movie that does some fun things, but I think there's a lot of really good reasons why this didn't quite make it out of the 80s, and no one talks about it that much. Personally, I'm going to keep it at a C+.
Okay.
And with the asterisk that this is going to get bumped up, basically a full letter grade for every drunk friend in the room with me.
Yeah.
So it's a C+ given how I watched it and what I was looking for, but I don't think it's a C+ for me at every stage of my life and every mindset.
Yes.
If that's the case, then why don't you just shut up?
Well, I guess I'll get into my scoring. Our scoring is actually a lot closer than I would have expected.
Okay.
I'm going to go for my critical score. I'm going to go B-. The strong parts of this movie outweigh the negative. So the visuals and the music are so strong.
Yeah.
The dialogue is bad, and most of the performances are not great, but they have a charm to them that nowhere nearly outweighs the positives of the movie for me. And like I said, because they're not boring elements, because the things that are not good aren't boring, they're at times unintentionally funny, and at worst just whatever. It tips over that side of the fence. I thought about C+, but I'm tipping it into B- because like the good parts of this movie are so good that it really drags the bad parts kicking and screaming into the B category. I think if people watch this movie, they'll have a good time, and that's a B to me and not a C.
That's me as well. I mean, it's definitely propped up by the fact that it isn't boring, and it's not a total failure.
And it looks so good visually.
I would argue much harder with someone trying to make this a D than someone making this an A.
Yeah, that's a good point. Speaking of A's, my personal score will be an A-.
Yeah.
I love this movie. An A for me is a movie I'll rewatch, and I will rewatch this probably for the rest of my life.
Yep.
It's great. I love it. Shout Factory's beautiful Blu-ray. We're not sponsored. I literally am wearing a shirt from the movie. The minus, I just want to justify it because it's like, why not A+, Reid, if you're just a freaking freak about this movie?
Yeah.
The negative parts of this movie still seep in to my pure enjoyment watch. I can't ignore the abduction of the Sorrels and how some of the dialogue I'm just kind of like, let's go, and how boring Michael Paré can be. I'll put in a smash cut of some of the lines from Michael Paré at this point. Just like, here are some scenes of Michael Paré talking to other characters.
I'll take care of giving the orders. Get under the bridge, pull over, and kill the lights. You're working for me. I tell you to do something, you do it. You don't do more, you don't do less.
You want your meal ticket back, get in the car, otherwise the deal is off.
You know, nobody ever had a hold on me the way you did. I would have done anything for you. Tom Cody, pleased to meet you.
If Harrison Ford was in that role, this would be better. It might be an A. A- is to reflect some of those things.
There's a totally unrelated scene of Harrison Ford just doing anything.
Yeah, here's a video of Harrison Ford like cutting an orange, and you'd be like, "Damn, that guy's got charisma."
Scoundrel. Scoundrel. I like the sound of that.
There's something back in Richmond I gotta take care of.
What are you talking about?
It's time for MVPs. I have a very strong feeling where yours is going to go. Who's your MVP?
I got co-MVPs, and it's because I didn't do enough research to separate Jim Steinman and Ry Cooder. Okay. Jim Steinman, who wrote the big musical numbers, as he wrote for Bonnie Tyler, he wrote for Meatloaf. He's around the music scene. Did great. I loved those at the beginning and ending numbers. Ry Cooder is also a name that I know. This is one of those all of your favorite musicians know who he is kind of guys.
Oh.
He has played with the Rolling Stones and then up to and including, like, is still producing well, he might be dead, I don't know. As of 10 years ago, he was still, like, releasing his own albums that were very wide-ranging in genre, but, like, largely kind of bluegrass, country, like, technical guitar stuff that I'd listened to some of it. I like his solo stuff. He's collaborated with a million bands that you like some of them, I promise you. And I thought his score was awesome.
Yeah.
And even when it wasn't a musical number, musical numbers were all 10s, even when it wasn't that, this movie was really propped up by just this, like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Whenever they're driving around, I'm just like, oh, what a bop.
Yeah. Well, I'm very glad that you picked. I was thinking about Jim Steinman, obviously. But I had to think about this really hard. This movie doesn't work really without the music. If the music, especially because, like, so much of the movie is just the concerts. There's like 10 minutes of concert footage, and it's not like it's the opening credits.
It's like 25. It's a lot.
Yeah, like it's like literal, it has to be good, and it was. But I was thinking, what if the music was, what's more important to me? The music being bad, or if this movie did not look this good?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm going with Walter Hill.
Okay.
Now, he wrote and directed. I'm not giving him MVP for writer. I'm giving it for director. This movie is so energetic and fun to look at. Visually, it's a feast of color. All the shots look great. It's just one of those movies that, like, especially on Blu-ray, it just pops.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it looks so good.
I love sets.
And the music's super important, but if this was in the hands of a bad director, and you didn't have all those weird decisions, you didn't have Willem Dafoe in leather overalls in a sledgehammer fight, you didn't have the movie looking the way that it did, I don't think it would work even with the good music. People would just listen to the score and never watch the movie.
And I'm sure there's some example of a movie with great music that no one watched.
Yes, which we can't think of, and we'll put a great example right here. The visuals, they're almost equally important to the music in this, 51-49. It's two strong suits.
Yeah. But
I am going to go with Mr. Walter Hill for the visuals and also the potential Bone Tomahawk influence, which I'm just going to credit him for, because I'm never going to be able to prove this. And I Googled it. It doesn't exist.
That's
but I know
maybe.
It's real. The truth is out there. Well, that's our show. That's another deep dive on the Greek Corner. We just keep doing them.
We dove in as deep as one could into this motion picture right here. I dare someone to dive deeper.
The only way you can dive deeper is if you go watch Albert Pyun's Road to Hell and then come tell us what's going on.
And then try to declare yourself the winner because you did that. You won't be able to.
I'll declare you the winner, I'll be honest. We had a really great recommendation from one of our viewers called Mr. Dozy7361. Thank you, Mr. Dozy, that they want to know what movie we're going to watch next so that they can, if they want to, come to the show having seen the movie that we're going to talk about. So for Mr. Dozy, we don't always have the movie selected now. Like right now, we do not, but we will put a post up on our YouTube page that teases the upcoming movie. So if you want to know what we're going to watch next, we'll put it up there. And if you want to follow us on Instagram, we do some very silly posts that also tell you what we're going to watch next. And it's a good time. So if you are a diehard fan like Mr. Dozy or one of our other 28 viewers, check us out on Instagram, follow our posts, and then you can see what movies we're going to talk about next. And do your homework if you want, or just don't. Come watch it with us. We don't care.
You know, everywhere I go, there's always an asshole.
I was trying to think of a way to do a Streets of Fire line to close this out that would, like, that we're going nowhere fast. But that doesn't flow. Do you have any ready? Tonight is what it meant to be young.
Should we get sledgehammers?
Nice, huh?